You also taught during sort of like some technology booms and things too. Was there anything about that?
I was pre-technology.
Yeah.
It was all acoustic, and you had, well, of course I had records.
Right.
And then you had tapes, which you couldn't find anything on the tape. So probably by the time I had CDs, probably at the end of my teaching career.
What about computers? Did you get in on any computer music making?
I bought my first Mac in 1984.
Okay, that's right when the Macintosh was made, so it was right on the edge.
When it was first introduced, and I had my Mac 520.
Yeah,
and that is what really allowed me to create my own materials.
So you used it more outside of the classroom, but to design the ideas and the curriculum.
I did our first symphony book on my Mac.
And one thing that I've heard, and I've heard you say this too, when I don't know whether it was Ray or whether it was a symphony came to you, the first edition of, I think, the JAG book, the Jazz Arts Group's 4th grade book came out. It was like super clean, like well produced, and you said like, no, that's too nice for these kids. It needs to just be on paper to where they can color on it. And is that true?
I don't remember that.
I think Ray told me that.
It's a throwaway book. It needs to be used and thrown away or written on. Or
Yep. Okay, so this is extremely fascinating to me because of all these happy accidents, as you call them. But I don't think they're accidents. I think you kind of have always had, to me, a sense of what needed to be done in the education realm to get across to the most people.
I'm not an intellectual. I always call myself a junk musician, and it gave me kind of a perspective of not being tied into being perfect all the time. So you could just let the rough edges roll,
right?
And whatever happened. And the kids that I taught, nobody ever knew they couldn't sing. They didn't know if my choir didn't reflect. What do I want to say? Anybody could sing. Anybody could participate.
Right.
It's kind of music for all. That's what general music should be, and that's what going to the symphony or going to a jazz concert should be. You shouldn't have to know anything or feel intimidated by the process.
Right. And so then maybe would it be safe to say that you're not really into a lot of the competitive music making in education, the competitions and the various things?
There's a place for that, but the beauty of elementary education is you throw all this stuff out, and maybe they pick it up, and maybe they don't. Maybe I don't have any kids that I had in school who are famous musicians, but I have many, many students, ex-students, who participate in music at some level.
And probably have really fancy jobs and can give money to music making.
Maybe.
So fast forwarding a little bit, we've added a few other layers to even now in the last decade of your teaching. You teach at a Montessori school at least twice a week,
Twice a week. That's just that was an accident too. Somebody said, do you know anybody who wants to teach a couple days a week at a Montessori school, music? And I said, oh yeah, I would like to do that. And that's really fun for me because it gives me that I still get to touch students, and have an effect, and still develop materials But now it's very jazz oriented,
right?
More than folk.
Yep. And then also with Jazz Arts Group, you do our Jumpin' Jacks program, which is a pre-K program for 2, 3, and maybe some 4-year-olds. Tell us about that and sort of how this idea how do you get that young of a person to understand, or is it even about having them understand jazz?
You're trying to get jazz in their vocabulary, but we don't know what they're thinking because Carol Argero was the one through the academy. She wanted to have something for all ages, and so I was the touchstone for the preschool. And my favorite story after 4 visits to a Head Start classroom, one little girl came to me and said, I just love Jasmine.
Jasmine.
Jasmine is the character in Aladdin, you know, so you don't know what they're picking up, but we're having a lot of fun, and they all know, we're trying to make jazz a familiar concept for them, but it doesn't mean they know anything about jazz.
So fast forward to 2000 and I think it might have been 9 that the Columbus Music Hall closes finally. Why did it close? And because then you continued to do concerts in your home pretty much right away after that.
Well, that was an accident.
All right. So
the Columbus Music Hall, the actual facility was ready for some rehab, and I was in over my head, and I was running out of money to present there.
Right.
So I closed it and had an offer for the restaurant across the street to buy it, and so I took my bar and my piano home.
Mm-hmm.
And Terry Waldo, who's a ragtime piano player, who's from Columbus but lives in New York, had always done his birthday concert right before or after Thanksgiving Day at the Music Hall for several years. And he said, well, where am I going to do my birthday concert? And I said, well, maybe we could do it at my house. And we did his first birthday concert there, whatever that year was. And I think Mark Fluge actually played before that. Mark Fluge came along with the piano. And because you moved the same piano that was important to the firehouse, right.
You took that with you into your house.
The piano is really my connection to jazz.
Right. And so then you start presenting concerts in your house by way of that Terry Waldo concert and some others. First, what about the house? So how long have you been living in that
I
house
bought it
now?
in like 1999.
And so it's like an early 1900s big...
It's an arts and crafts bungalow, but a big one.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so it's got the rooms that have the big wooden sliding doors that would separate them, right?
Right.
And how many people can you fit in your house?
We can seat about 50, and I've had 80. When Matt Wilson was there, we had, I think, 90 people in that.
And some standing room. And the funny, maybe happy accident is that you ask any jazz musician in town, it's probably one of the best rooms acoustically that there is.
That's an accident. Yeah, by accident. It has the ugliest ceiling, but it's some kind of acoustic tile or a tile ceiling, and it just works. It's just a nice jazz venue.
And so
non-venue.
Yeah, non-venue. You've been running concerts out of that house for, I guess, the better part of a decade. We're approaching 7 or 8 years.
8, yeah.
Any signs of slowing down? Are you going to keep?
Because now the house is beyond my ability to take care of the house.
It's a huge house.
And it's on an acre, so.
Yep. So if anybody wants to scoop that house up when you're done with it and turn it into a venue, or if anyone wants to scoop up the Columbus Music Hall and turn it into a venue, there's all these opportunities for acoustically awesome houses that you've stumbled across. Mm-hmm. So reflecting on this whole thing, obviously you've never really come out and said you're a jazz person, but people have bestowed jazz lady on you. Right.
I mean, and that's where other music now is not that much fun. Jazz is, for me personally, the most fun to listen to. I think I grew up in that period of when jazz was so hard to listen to and far out that it was not fun. And I think if I had been going to the Columbus Jazz Orchestra all those years, I would have picked up on it sooner.
And so would you say that teaching more and then getting into the music hall, you grew more of an affinity for the music than maybe you even had growing up?
Right.
You became more of a jazz listener as you got into more of these ventures.
Right.
So and you know this already, you're about to be awarded the Ray Eubanks Distinguished Service Award, which is an award the Jazz Arts Group started to basically thank somebody that's taken jazz and done something amazing with it in the community. And in your case, whether it be early childhood education or presenting concerts or a mixture of both, that obviously is true with you, and I think anybody in Columbus would agree. What does that make you think? I know you're not somebody that loves to talk, wax on and on about yourself in that way, but do you feel like you've made a big impact through what you've done?
Well, it's a pinprick in the big picture of what's out there. I do. PBJ has had the PBJ and jazz is kind of a life of its own right now.
Right.
And I kind of am riding on that coattails. Even though I started it, I'm kind of connected, but it could stand alone easily without me. I'm proud of that.
And so that's a sign of sort of the greater good that it causes or has caused and continues to do.
Actually, the thing about PBJ and jazz is that it not only connects the little kids, but it connects the parents with jazz. that's the beauty of and real jazz. We were able to use real musicians playing real music, and that's real important to me, to not have a contrived situation for kids and parents to listen to music. It's kind of like cocktail hour at
Sure.
10:30.
10 in the morning, yeah, right. But on the flip side, it's caused the professionals to sort of think about how they present their music. You know, because you've seen the Hunter Tones and the New Basics Brass Band and all of these different groups that have...
those two groups have actually done a kids CD.
Kids CDs.
So that's great. Yeah, I think they think about it. Yeah, I'm kind of a little bit of a educator for the bands, too.
Yep. And just as much as maybe people have instigated you into taking on projects, you're now sort of instigating, whether you know it or not, instigating the musicians to sort of think about their craft differently. And what are you hearing now from either former students or teachers that you've had student teach? Because I know you've mentioned a few different... Do you have people come back to you and mention anything about what they learned being in your class or being a student teacher under your sort of tutelage? Certainly you hear some stuff.
I think it's just a general feeling that they felt good about. Of course, I probably have enemies too, but
no.
That kid I threw the music stand across the floor probably doesn't like me very much. But
right.
But I do have kids that came up through my program who felt good about it. When I taught elementary, the university courses, I tried to never make any student, they weren't music majors, they were elementary teachers. And I have some of those that come back to me and say, we had so much fun in your class, and so I do stuff with music. Nobody was ever intimidated and had to sing alone or had to perform on the auto harp or play the recorder, or the things that you could do it if you wanted to, but you wanted to just enjoy music and pass it on to the kids.
Right. And well, at the time of this podcast, you know, this afternoon you have a Jump for Jazz assembly at an after-school center. On Saturday we did the PBJ. You'll go back to your Montessori school tomorrow, and then we'll start
preschool in the morning.
Teach preschool, and then we will start a round of work with the Ohio Arts Council on creative aging. So that's sort of a more recent new wrinkle. We've come to you and said, how do we adapt what you do for young people in sort of a senior living environment, and including some memory care issues, Alzheimer's and dementia. What's been your experience with that, and do you feel like your approach can correlate to late life folks in addition to early?
I think it's that cheerleader. You're just cheerleading. You're hoping that, you know, you're throwing something out there. You're trying to find something that they can relate to. That was like one of the most fun things I did with Jazz Arts Group, was the aging people, and to see them, their eyes brighten up, even if their memory was starting to go. But you know, that's going to be short-lived. Those people are at the end of the jazz, growing up listening to jazz. You know, in 10 years, it'll have to be rock and roll.
Right. So they are currently able to say that this was the music of their youth, and here's who I went and saw when I was a teenager.
We did dance to those big bands, but those people are disappearing too.
Well, we got to get to work then.
We got to get to work
and focus on the boomers then that are.
Well, and those people all were dance oriented, and that is kind of the tragedy of jazz, is that now it's an elite. There's the audience versus the performer. The audience is not involved. There is no dancing. There is no goofing off, moving around, having fun. So their memory of listening to jazz, if they're younger than me, is listening.
Right.
Either they played it or they listened, but they didn't interact with it.
And as you mentioned, there's a period, in your opinion, that the music was tough to listen to.
It was tough to listen to.
Unless
too many notes, too many, give me a tune that I can hum.
Right. Interesting. Well, I'm interested in seeing what you continue to do, and you've been the most important person for me to shadow and watch and observe. And I think you deserve this award without question, whether you like to accept it or not. And incidentally, you'll be coming to and from, because you're presenting a concert at your house on the day that you're also accepting the award. You're going to continue doing concerts until you have to quit, which is great. And above all, I have to say on air, thank you for what you've done for me, and also for the myriads of generations in Columbus, musicians and non-musicians, to get this music into a wider group of people's lives in a way that feels very real and fruitful. So thank you, and thanks for joining us today.
Thanks.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of The Jazz Scene. We want to hear your feedback.